The wheels of justice turn slowly. And that reality is running smack into the political reality we are facing as a country. A potentially critical number of American voters are saying that a conviction would really, really matter to them as far as electing the next president. But the way things are going here between the courts and the defendant's endless delay tactics, will a conviction come too late? Joining me now is former Attorney General Eric Holder. Mr. Attorney General, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I'm sure you saw the same numbers that I saw about Americans and a fairly strong belief on the part of a not insignificant number of voters that the convictions matter. I got to ask you, as a former top Justice Department official, the top, do you think the Department of Justice took too long in really starting its investigation of Donald Trump and his inner circle in earnest?
Well, I don't know exactly what was going on in the Justice Department. Obviously, I didn't have access to the materials they were looking at or what processes they were going through. And hindsight is always, 20/20. But I can say that I think that once Jack Smith was brought onto the case, that the case has moved in, I think, a very, a fast manner, and they moved things along. And so I think, the focus that you raise is a very legitimate one. And I think that, the process, the judicial process, needs to proceed in such a way that the American people have this vital piece of information before them, before they actually cast ballots in November. But I think the emphasis now has to be on the judicial system, and to try to make sure that they process these cases as quickly as is possible. These cases can be designated in such a way that they are fast-tracked. I mean, it certainly happened in the Supreme Court with regard to the Nixon tapes case. And there's other cases where that has occurred as well. And I would think that given the reality of where we stand now and the closeness of the election, I would hope that the courts will move these cases along, as they did not do during Mr. Trump's term in office, where he successfully played the courts and delayed.
What do you make of this 36 days to decide on whether to rehear Trump's gag order appeal? I mean, again, I'm not a lawyer. I play one on television badly. It seemed like a long time for a fairly straightforward decision. And at the same time, we still don't have a ruling on this presidential immunity question 15 days later.
Well, I was a trial judge. I've never been an appellate judge, so I don't know all the dynamics that go on between the three individuals who heard these cases. But it seems to me that it shouldn't take an awful long period of time to decide them. We talk about this presidential immunity case, and it's something that was raised, some months ago. We've talked about it for a pretty long period of time. But if you step back and look at what the claim is, there's really not much there. I mean, this is a case that I think can be decided, should be decided, relatively quickly. And my hope would be that that will be the case, so that the necessary appeals can be filed and the judicial system can get through the case and actually put this case before a jury.
But, you say it should be decided quickly. I think for some of us on the outside who are neither trial lawyers or appellate lawyers, it doesn't seem like it's moved quickly. Like, at this point, it's just, can it move? Does 15 days seem like a long time to you? Or is that relatively expeditious as far? I mean, given the time frame we're operating in, are we still in the realm of this potentially being seen as moving quickly if they hand down a decision 25 days later?
25 days, 30 days, I'd say that was fairly expeditious. But the reality for me is that I never thought that the March trial date in Washington was likely to actually occur. There were going to be delays, I thought, of some nature. And so my belief has always been that this is a case likely to go to trial in May or in June. And so from my own perspective, I think the case is still on track.
Can I get your thoughts on something that the conservative judge Michael Luttig tweeted? I think it was last week. It was never contemplated that the courts would have to defend themselves against such a belligerent defendant president, determined to delegitimize them in the eyes of the American public. And they are powerless to defend themselves against him, and he knows it. Now, we were talking about sort of the pressure on the judges to come to a quick conclusion with some of these rulings. But on the other side of this, if they don't rule in Trump's favor, is just an enormous amount of pressure on them from the other side of the aisle, if you will. And I wonder what you make of that. Again, I know you're not an appeals court, former appeals court lawyer, but just as someone who understands the sort of mechanisms of justice and the role that these judges are now playing in some ways, holding aloft American democracy. What do you make of that assessment on the part of Judge Luttig?
Yeah, I'm actually pretty confident that all the judges who are involved in these cases, when I'm talking about the appellate judges now, will decide these cases as quickly as they can in a fair way. I don't think they're going to be intimidated by the Trump MAGA people. I don't think that is a concern. But he is right. The judicial system is not really equipped to push back in a way that the executive branch can if there are attacks brought against it by, members of Congress or political parties. That is just the way we have designed our system. And so I think it's incumbent upon the courts. That's another reason why they need to expedite these matters so they don't subject themselves to unnecessarily long period of criticism, because that has a long-term negative impact on the perception of the courts. If, for instance, the delay goes on for 2-3 months and you have just these withering, unfounded attacks on our judicial system, that will have a collateral impact on the system itself.
Let me ask you one more question, just as a sort of matter of course. The 14th Amendment case is going to be heard at the Supreme Court, I believe, 2 weeks from tomorrow on February 8th. There have been a number of amicus briefs filed. The Biden Department of Justice has not filed an amicus brief. Now, on its face, I sort of understand the political implications of the Biden administration weighing in on a decision that could greatly benefit Joe Biden, depending on what the court rules, if they take Donald Trump off the ballot. But as a matter of import for the federal government and sort of like a big constitutional question, it seems unusual at best that the Department of Justice hasn't weighed in on this from a sort of institutional point of view. Are you surprised by it?
No, not really. I mean, I do think that, yeah, you would think that in a case of that magnitude where the Justice Department had a relevant interest that they would weigh in with an amicus brief of some sort. On the other hand, I don't think we can divorce this case from the political reality that the Biden administration generally, the Justice Department more specifically, faces. And I think the decision or the determination by the executive branch not to comment on the case, not to be involved in that component of the case makes a great deal of sense. The Justice Department wants to be seen as only trying the case, applying the facts, dealing with the law, and making, its case in that way, not to be a part of some effort to get him off the ballot. I think that, that might be something in a different context the Justice Department would want to comment upon. But in this context, I think silence is probably the best policy.
Former Attorney General Eric Holder, it's invaluable to have your perspective in moments like these. I really appreciate your time tonight.
Into the war room to see you, so I had to hack my way onto this frequency.
This better be critical, Wheelie.
So, come on, what is it not, please? Okay, couple of things. I wanted low on the double. I was thinking about taking a couple of months sick leave, maybe starting today. And, oh yeah, I intercepted a transmission from Megatron.
Then send it through.
Yes, sir, right away, sir. And so I was so damn good on the other stuff.
This is your last warning, insects. Relinquish what remains of the Allspark.
So who's the insect? You? What? Who's the insect?
Protect you. They were defeated on our world, and we will defeat them here.
This was just a diversion!
Security teams bring up. Rabbit, she's already inside. Deeds! Give me an update on that reserve. Boss readiness. What was his name? What was it?
Evac, sir.
Right, evac.
She's right in front.
We are facing a heavy, sustained attack. They appear to be after the Allspark aircraft.
General! You need to evac immediately. Evac immediately. Hold on. National security advisory.